Good day to you, friends. Today we have with us Mr. MC Paul. He worked as a lecturer for nearly 4 decades and he's been teaching the Bible in Telugu states. Glad to have you, Dad.
Happy
Today we're gonna talk about theology. This is in part of series, so we recommend you to watch the other videos that we made available in this series. Thank you. So can we start off with the definition of theology?
Before we talk about theology, we need to know the meaning of revelation. If we start with revelation, we will be able to better understand what theology is. You see, impersonal objects, inanimate objects, those are passive. And if a person wants to study, if he wants to employ empirical method, if he wants to observe, we call him or we call his position active. And that material is passive. There is nothing it can reveal by itself. It is not on its own. It is at the disposal of this person who is studying it. So, supposing it's soil, he can study and simply say, this is alkaline soil, or this is black cotton soil. It's at his disposal, and he has observed and is able to say what it is. Coming to spiritual persons, this method does not apply, because according to the scriptures, according to Corinthians 1st epistle, 2nd chapter, 11th verse, it is only the spirit of man which can understand the things of man. And in the same way, it is only the Spirit of God who understands the things of God. In such a situation, only when man reveals who he is, what he is, will be able to understand. And if we understand man only when he reveals, how much more we need to know that we can understand God only when he reveals himself. So revelation, it is unveiling. Revelation is a very important aspect so far as theology is concerned. Now, theology, you may simply say knowledge of God, or study of God, or God's study. In these modern days, we would better understand if we say theology is science concerning God. That is theology. Yes.
Yeah. So we've understood that as revelation is required in order to get started with theology. So the study of the knowledge of God. Yeah. Could you tell us in layman terms how one could understand the word theology?
We need to start with the basic concept of theology. It is exegetical theology, we call it. We need to be passive because we only receive the revelation. Our role is not to be active. Exegetical theology, it is received as it is presented. We study the books of Bible as they are, and then we study how each book is originated. and we may call it a canonical study. And then we need to know how books are arranged, and the order of arrangement we need to understand. And then finally, we can study the revelation of God as presented in the books, that is, exegetical theology. And then between exegetical theology and systematic theology, we need to study biblical theology. Biblical theology is basically studying, keeping in mind the history of the presentation of the books. We may call it a straight line way, linear way of understanding the Bible. That's biblical theology. And it goes on and on as the redemption history progresses. But systematic theology, it goes circular because we concentrate more on the various parts of the Bible or various ways Bible presents different things, and it goes circular in a way. We need to pick from here and there, and we need to arrange the entire material in a particular order. That is systematic theology. Biblical theology, we may call it the basic theology, because it's only from there we draw all of the branches of theology.
Okay. Can you also talk about the significance of getting to know this theology?
During the church history, we may have to admit that this study concerning God hasn't been so very steady, so very regular. After the talk about reason arose, study of theology had to take a definite beginning in a way, keeping in mind the obsession of mankind with reasoning. Study of God had to take a definite turn and a definite beginning, particularly beginning of 20th century. There has been a steady desire to apply theology to understand God.
How does it benefit to a normal believer? Like, does he also have to toil and get to know this, or how do we understand the importance of theology in one's life?
Study of God is the need of the hour. You need to know who your God is. You need to know the mind of your God. So, in all the 66 books, you notice the mind of God. That's how God intended. So, without paying proper attention to know the mind of God, there is no way you can really relate with Him, no way you can really worship Him. So, everybody should have a desire to know the mind of God. And this mind of God is present in all those 66 books. Then another thing, Tozer, I believe, he says, you can worship God only to the extent you know Him. So knowing God is of utmost importance to worship Him. Then theology becomes all the more important.
In the church, like, is there a systematic way to let this theology be taught to every believer so that people would have holistic understanding of the entire theology as such?
It should all begin with the leadership. Leaders are supposed to know the importance of theology. And only when they pay attention, they would be able to receive something. Only when they receive, they would be able to give something. That's why it should all begin with the leadership. Ultimately, we say theology is study of God. They need to study before they enable the congregation to receive.
Yeah. What are some dangers if people don't consider this entire theology as such?
The basic danger is subjectivism. Theology is basically objective, it's from outside. God wants us to receive His revelation, it's objective. And then if we leave it aside, the danger is everything becomes subjective. So man just gives out what he has within him. It may sound pious, it may sound scriptural, but once they neglect the study of God, they end up with presenting what they have within them. Objective reality and subjective experience. They serve out of subjective experience, and this experience, without receiving objectively, it's only from human perspective.
Yeah. So you're saying that without the knowledge of the entire theology, if people are driven by just passages here and there, that would lead to some kind of a subjective approach rather than the holistic understanding of the mind of God.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. We have a lot of theologians. So, how do we choose which theologian should be considered to learn from? Can we just rely on every theologian, or should we pick and choose in order to have sound doctrine?
So far as the desire of uh, theologians is concerned, we say it's all right. It's good to have desire. But you see, um, neglecting the revelation of God, they want to study, the only alternative would be natural theology. We may call it it's a philosophy. Philosophy builds from the nature. So it might talk about reaching God, but it all begins there. Revelation is different. It's from God. And then when we say we cannot study God because He is a spiritual person, only the Spirit knows who He is, what He is, and ignoring that, if we depend on the nature and depend on our observation of what is seen around, our study of what is seen around, we end up in a totally different realm, that is uh, realm of philosophy, and much speculation would be there, and it may end up as foolish speculation, as Paul calls it. Speculation by itself may not be wrong, but it can become foolish because ignoring revelation, you are trying to build or uh, build from the nature, and you want to reach out to the mind of God to know His mind.
Yeah. So you're talking about theologians who are banking fully on the Holy Spirit to be um, able to understand the mind of God from the scriptures. So how do we differentiate between these two categories?
Yeah, liberal theologians, we have talked about them. The other group, you can call them evangelical theologians. They too devote themselves to study. They too observe. They too apply empirical methods. They too look around to study scientifically. Their tools are scientific, true, but basically they believe in revelation. Basic provision of revelation, man can keep on studying because various phenomena are seen all around, and these could be studied in detail. On these, he can observe, he can apply all those tools, all those methods, scientific methods, and all. So, wholesome understanding is from revelation, and detailed understanding could be the result of the study, keeping in mind the basic revelation from above. These liberal theologians, they are real good scholars. We don't really do good by keeping them aside. We need to know what their study is. We need to know what their findings are. So um, having the information which they give, we keep the whole information under our thumb, and we bring it under the revelation, wholesome revelation, uh, which God intended to be received from the Bible. So that's how uh, those who really intend to make best use of theology can approach things this way.
Yeah. So when we have liberal theologians and evangelical theologians, we incline ourselves towards evangelicals more, but at the same time we kind of draw some good lessons from the liberals as well. So it's not like a total rejection as such, but we kind of see and then check if that is kind of helpful.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. If one wants to be a theologian, because we get to hear about a lot of theologians who have contributed to the universal church in helping us understanding the mind of God. So, if one wants to be a theologian, what are the steps that he needs to take?
It all depends on his mind, his desire. So those who really want to serve the Lord with good understanding would love to go to theological colleges. So when they love to go to theological colleges, they would naturally be equipped theologically. And with that basic understanding of theology, they may pursue further studies, and who knows, they might become scholars on a future day. But as we say, if they are evangelical scholars, they would really serve the purpose which God intended in this world among people and among believers.
Role of Bible teachers within a church and how they make use of the theology.
The leaders, because they are theologically equipped, they would be better fit to make the congregation receive the sound doctrine. But their intention should be to pass on this sound doctrine. And this sound doctrine, when they receive and they understand it in a trustworthy manner, they should be willing to exhort and also willing to, confound or refute if there is error. If that is their role, the congregation naturally would receive only the sound doctrine, and the congregation would have sound understanding of scriptures, and that results in their ethical everyday conduct. And their ethical everyday conduct would be good, and that's how the church can soundly be edified.
Yeah. So this is the role of Bible teachers within a church and how they make use of the theology, right? Yeah. Could we also talk about the different aspects of theology?
There are many branches because, I mean, when you study a particular matter, you are studying the mind of God on that matter. When you study the persons, or when you study Godhead, it's theology proper. But here, when you study any aspect in the Bible, it is basically the mind of God on this aspect you are studying. So there could be number of branches in theology, depending on the number of aspects a person can pick up from the Bible,
Yeah.
concepts a person can pick up from the Bible.
Yeah. Could we talk about the major aspects of theology, like as you said, studying about Godhead and then studying about the Father? That's peteriology as well, right? Could we talk about the other major aspects?
When you want to study about the Son, it is Christology. And when you want to study about the Holy Spirit, it's pneumatology. Then, as I have earlier told you, any concept could be studied, but in so doing, you should know that you are only trying to understand the mind of God from the Bible on that particular concept or aspect.
Yeah. So, what God revealed about Himself and also about other important matters through the scriptures or in the scriptures.
Yeah, God reveals about Himself, and He reveals about His mind on various aspects of human life. So, the Bible, as it progresses, we see the history. That's why biblical theology basically takes history as its foundation. So, in what is history? History is the life of man as lived on this earth. So, mankind keep living on this earth. Generations pass by, generation after generation. So, history and revelation are linked. That's why we call it progressive revelation.
Yeah. Um, for the normal believers who are not Bible teachers as such, who wouldn't go to seminaries, uh, what is it that they have to bear in mind in approaching theology, about its importance and about its relevance?
Whatever problems we see around these days, particularly the problem of false teaching, is only because of the absence of theological education, I say. I dare say that. Most leaders of the churches these days believe that faith begins with them. Why do they think so? It's because they ignore the church history and they ignore the importance of studying or having theological education. Because they keep these aside, it's just natural that false teaching creeps in. Once false teaching creeps in, the entire congregation is taken for a ride, and they are driven in the wrong direction. And that's why the New Testament is much concerned about the false teachers. And there you see the role of those teachers who receive sound doctrine, who understand it in a trustworthy manner, and who exhort and refute. You see the role of such people, and such people are needed to check this false teaching, um, in these days, particularly. because it's spreading like wildfire. And we see, I'm deeply pained to talk about this. We see all around this false teaching, mainly because people are not equipped in theology. People don't care to study theology. People don't care to know what God intended through theology, who really don't care to know what has been happening all through these centuries, down the centuries.
Yeah. So, do you encourage every believer to kind of invest their time in knowing the theology, the right theology, so that they would be able to safeguard themselves and also to be able to help others who kind of um, come against this kind of false teachings around?
Yeah, it's good if well-meaning believers devote their time to join theological colleges and learn. It would be good. Then you may say, how will it be possible? Because uh, everyone has his own work at home. Everyone has to uh, work to maintain his family. So maintain her family. So all may not be able to go to theological college, right? But sound teaching is available in different forms. They have Bible handbooks, Bible dictionaries, commentaries, small books written on various subjects with a theological base. They can make use of all this. So there you say such people have a theological mind, and no one can stop them from having such mind, and no one can deprive them of having theological understanding, because God enabled people to learn theology. God enabled them to write books. God enabled them to make videos to present sound understanding. So from these, they can happily receive, and nobody can stop them from receiving. That is why I say there is no excuse for somebody to say that there is no opportunity for him to learn. He may not be able to go to a theological college or a seminary, but he has various ways of acquiring this particular knowledge. So sometimes they can, and some of them can study theology through distance education, we call it. Extension studies, we call those. Those facilities are also available. Believers can make best use of these provisions.
Yeah. So you could learn more about MC Paul from his website. And thanks for your time. In this series, we have made available other videos, so we recommend watching them as well. So thanks for your time. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, friends. Happy John. Happy Holy.
Happy Dad.
మతాలన్నీ నిజంగా ఒక్క దేవుని గురించే బోధిస్తున్నాయా? ఇది చాలా ప్రాముఖ్యమైన విషయం. ఈ ప్రశ్నకు సమాధానం తెలుసుకోవడానికి తప్పనిసరిగా మీరు RTF 2వ జాతీయ కాన్ఫరెన్స్కి రావాల్సిందే.
What we believe about God is the most important thing about us. ఎందుకంటే దేవుని గురించి మనం ఏం నమ్ముతున్నామో అది మన జీవితాన్ని, మన విలువలను, మన పరిచర్యను, మన యొక్క ఆధ్యాత్మికతను ఎంతో ప్రభావితం చేస్తుంది. మరి రానున్నటువంటి 2వ నేషనల్ కాన్ఫరెన్స్లో మనం థియాలజీ ప్రధానమైనటువంటి అంశంగా కలిగి యేసుక్రీస్తు ప్రభువును తెలుసుకోవటానికి నోయింగ్ గాడ్, షోయింగ్ గాడ్ అనే అద్భుతమైనటువంటి థీమ్తో మరి మనం కలిగి ఉండబోతున్నాం.
బైబిల్ని లోతుగా ధ్యానం చేసుకోవాలి, బైబిల్లో ఉన్నటువంటి సత్యాన్ని సమగ్రంగా అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి అన్నప్పుడు పండితుల మాటలు వినటం అనేది చాలా ప్రాముఖ్యం. మన దేవుడు ఎవరో తెలుసుకోకుండా మనం ఎలా వ్యవహరించాలో మనకు తెలియదు. మన దేవుడు ఎవరో తెలిస్తే కనుక ద వే వి బిహేవ్, మనం ప్రవర్తించే విధానం, దేవుడిని చూసే విధానం మారిపోతుంది కదా.
There is no higher activity with which the mind can be engaged than in the pursuit of knowledge of God.
నేను వ్యక్తిగతంగా ఆ టాపిక్స్ నేర్చుకోవాలని చాలా ఎక్సైటెడ్గా ఉన్నాను. బికాస్ అంత మంచి కంటెంట్ నాకు తెలిసి ఇప్పట్లో మనకు దొరకదని మాత్రం నేను స్పష్టంగా చెప్పగలను. ఐ ఎంకరేజ్ మై వ్యూవర్స్ ఇమీడియట్గా ఆర్టీఎఫ్ సెకండ్ నేషనల్ కాన్ఫరెన్స్కి రిజిస్ట్రేషన్ చేసుకోవాలని, మంచి అవకాశాన్ని సద్వినియోగం చేసుకోవాలని మనం చేస్తున్నాము.